Hello, welcome to Productions MJC.
Now, as you may recall, I told you about Harry Baird, and I had been directed to him by another person that said he's polite. He's in Sydney, Australia, I believe, and apparently we've had a falling out. You see, Harry had directed me to some other videos, so I looked at them and I reported back to him what I saw and what I thought I saw. And if you recall, if you notice, I went to his video, made a comment, he directed me to some other things, and I told him, you know, this doesn't look right because this building down here is supposed to be curved, but it's flat in the video, so there's a problem. And we also, you know, we talked about his experiment and everything else. And at first, he said, hopeful pessimist, it's refreshing to talk to someone who has an open mind. Keep that in mind. No pun intended. Keep that in mind, because he says it's refreshing to talk to somebody with an open mind, meaning me. This is what he wrote. So he directed me to Antonio's thing, and that's that first video. He directed me to another video by Vortex Puppy, and I watched it, and I reported back to him what I saw, what I observed, what I thought. I had a couple of afterthoughts that I wanted to interject right here. I had planned on making this video about X amount of minutes long, but it's gotten way too long. But I need to say some things. This man is a flat earth believer. And for those of you that have subscribed to me, you recognize this because I made a video stating how flat earthers have blinders on. And here is a flat earther demonstrating having blinders on. I just, it's in the video. He really does it. See how he's looking to the side? He can't see what's to the side because his blinders are blocking him. He talks about how everybody looks with blinders on. They look straight ahead. They don't look from side to side. Then he turns around and says, don't believe anything I just told you. We live on a flat earth. It's classic. The other person, Zach, let me get his picture up here. He said that he studied for 6 months angular resolution before he decided to put out his first video. And that's sad because he still got it wrong. Angular resolution is the ability of the observing device, whether it's an eye or a camera, a telescope, to resolve something, to separate it out. Let's say you have 2 white lights. At some point, whether because of their size, their closeness to each other, their distance from you, some factor like that, you will no longer be able to resolve them as 2 separate lights. They will look like one light. Well, the flat earthers turn that around and say, Zach says it himself, at the horizon, your ability to see won't work, so you'll be missing 3, 4, 5 feet of vision because of angular resolution. Well, no, that's not what happens. Because on my videos, you can clearly see the mountains behind the horizon. You can see the mountains behind the building that has disappeared. It's not because of angular resolution that I can't see the building anymore. They know curvature's there, so they just shotgun and panic and try to figure out ways to explain why curvature is there. Angular resolution has nothing to do with stuff disappearing behind the curve of the curvature of the Earth. It has to do with the ability to separate images and discern that there really are 2 separate images in there instead of just one. This is what I told Harry, simply explaining why these people were wrong and incorrect. And he said, okay, we're done. And the way he said it was quite interesting. He told me that I was quite judgmental with no substance under my rhetoric. Here's what he says: no more discussion with you will be possible. for there is no first principle unless I agree with you, which I interpret to mean he's just saying, well, I'm done talking to you. I don't agree with you, and we can't really have a discussion because I don't agree with you. Then he says, you have a closed mind, meaning I have a closed mind. So how did I go from having an open mind to a closed mind? Well, obviously, at first he thought I was agreeing with him. Therefore, I had an open mind. But when I started to point out things that I saw, inconsistencies and problems with these observations and explanations that other people were saying, obviously I have a closed mind because I don't agree with him. That, to me, is the pure definition of a closed mind. Somebody who says, hey, you agree with me. You have an open mind. Oh, you don't agree with me? Yeah, you have a closed mind. That's not what that means, having an open mind and a closed mind. Because I put closed-minded people disable comments on their videos. You can look at any of my videos. I don't disable comments. As a matter of fact, Taboo Conspiracy called me out on a mistake I made. I admitted it. I corrected it. And that's the only one, because he called me out on some other things that I proved were incorrect on his part. And like Harry, he won't have anything to do with me, hates my guts and everything else. Now Harry, though, he's a nice, polite person. I mean, that is probably just pure rage from Harry, saying, hey, you have a closed mind. But what's interesting is the thing that he talked about, the thing that he got so angry about was he sent me out to this flat earth, Vortex Puppy, and I watched this one that Vortex Puppy had put out, where Gavin and Zach and somebody else, I don't even know who they are. I don't know anything about them. This one talked the most and explained the Earth. And if you watch this video, I couldn't get into it 16 minutes before I'm like, okay, hold on here. I don't want to waste any more of my life. I need to tell Harry thanks, but no thanks. And the reason I did is because this gentleman explained stuff. And he said the reason that we see things curved when they're really flat is because our eyeball is curved. I mean, he literally said that. He said the curvature of the eyeball makes things that are flat look curved. And he talks about a bunch of other stuff. He actually explains the globe really well. He says when you're sitting on a sphere and looking out in all directions from the sphere, you can't really see the outward curvature of the sphere, which is totally correct. And I explained that to Harry. I said, Harry, they're telling you the right information, and then they're telling you don't believe what you see, listen to what I say, and you live on a flat plane. You don't live on a ball. Even though, I mean, this was amazing to me. These guys admit that it looks curved. They admit that we can prove curvature by the way it looks. We can show things. They talk about Euclidean space, which is flat two-dimensional space. It's a thought. It's a mind game is what I feel it is. And they talk about that. He even goes into explaining about triangles. And he explains about triangles, how if a triangle gets larger, everything stays the same. And he explains that a triangle doesn't work on a sphere because angles change and stuff, but on a flat planar thing, it doesn't. As I go to Harry, I said, look, Harry, what he's saying is the 4 centimeter edge is called the rise. This 6 centimeter edge is called the run, and the 7 is the hypotenuse. And I told him, I said, you can easily prove that you live on a sphere because when you shorten the rise, then the run shortens, and you run into problem that doesn't happen on a flat plane. And this gentleman explained that and agreed with that, and yet Harry thinks that he's telling him about a flat Earth. He's not. He's explaining that on a globe, if the rise shortens, then the run will shorten because you're on a globe. And it's just the funniest thing, because He just says the reason you see things the way they are is because your eyeball's curved. And I said, Harry, the inside of a camera isn't curved. It's flat. And it's always been flat from the earliest films. Even daguerreotypes, it's flat. The CMOS and CCD sensors are flat. Everything's flat. So you look at this and you go, wait a minute. And he says light travels in straight lines unless it passes the medium right there. So I asked Harry, how does light shine on the bottom of a cloud over Mesquite, Nevada? It has to turn at 100 degrees, more than 90 degrees. You know, I asked him that. I said, go out and do the experiments yourself. And they explain all this. And it's just like the people that talk about if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's around to hear it, does it make a sound? And that is a ridiculous thought experiment. Because they'll say, well, sound is a perceived thing, and if there's nobody to perceive it, then it doesn't happen. Well, no, it isn't. It's the compression and rarefaction of the air around us that produces a sound wave. If you throw if you have a torch, a flashlight in America, a torch in other places, if you take that and you turn it on and you throw it into a room and you shut the door, does it magically stop producing light? You don't see anything anymore? No. If a tree falls in the forest, yes, it makes a sound, even if there's nobody around to hear it. It's just stupid. And I told them, these guys bloviate and talking about all this stuff is just silly thought experiments that aren't really, they're philosophy. It is not the real world. It's just crazy and silly and stupid. And that's what I explained to Harry. And he said, I have a closed mind and I'm just out of it. So going back to this, yes, indeed. The bromance is over. Harry, who at once thought I had a great open mind and commented on it and was happy because he thought I had potential to be turned to his side or whatever. Then he realized when I started to point out the inconsistencies and the silliness of these thought experiments about what light is. They're now having to admit, like they have to admit that the sun does not shrink to a tiny pinpoint. They have to try to explain why it doesn't. This gentleman, he admits fully, we see the sun move in an arc. It doesn't move on a flat planar path. We see it as an arc, but that's of course because our eyeball is arced. But the camera sees the same thing, and it's got a flat receiver, a flat receptor, a flat sensor. He talks about binocular vision, and yet he totally ignores the fact that a camera has monocular vision. And when they talk about Euclidean space, that's a thought experiment on a two-dimensional plane of space. Number one, they admit that there is space. And Euclidean space, it talks about the forces of gravity, the gravitational, gravimetric forces and how they interact with everything else. Well, Harry doesn't even see that. The problem was, when I started to talk about the rise and run of this thing, Harry saw the error of his ways. He thought I was just some silly goof that could be worked on, when in fact, in my calculus class in high school, I had the second highest ACT test score. The valedictorian of the school beat me out, and I didn't even know it until all the other guys in the class started bragging about their scores, and they asked me what mine was. I went and checked, and I'm like, it's this, and their jaws dropped. The problem was, when I started talking about the rise and the run of a triangle not working, when I started to explain in great detail, like the gentleman that they were dealing with, I mean, they use a lot of fancy words, they talk a lot of fancy phrases, and they trick you into thinking they're talking about something else, when he is actually explaining quite well the Earth and how you can't see the outer edge of a sphere when you're standing on it, like flat earthers want you to prove curvature with. He proved curvature, and he knows that curvature can be proven visually, so he tries to backpedal and say that vision is a false sense because your eyeball's curved, therefore you see curvature. Just crazy, silly stuff. No, he says it's really flat, but you think it's curved because the angle right here equals the angle here, so it's really flat, but you perceive it as curved because the back of your eye is curved. Problem is that you get a modern digital camera with a CMOS or CCD sensor, and nope, it's not curved, it's flat. And I explained that to Harry. I said, it's not working. And then the other guy Harry sent me to said light doesn't really travel straight. And Harry says light doesn't travel straight. And yet his mentor or whatever it is says light travels in straight lines until it hits this thing here. The transition point between air, water, or water and air. And then it refracts it and bends it. Well, what is there in the desert of Mesquite, Nevada, that's in the bottom of the Great Basin, 1,600 feet above sea level? What makes light shine on the bottom of the clouds that are a mile or two above it at sunrise or sunset? And like I've explained in another video, there's mountains that are 14,000 feet above sea level on either side of it. How does it get over those mountaintops and then under the cloud? I've given Harry... Well, you folks know me. You know that I say, don't trust what I say. Go out and do the experiment yourself and then see if I'm telling you the truth or not. Like with Eric Dubay, whatever his name is. He said that the sun shrunk to a little dot, a little pinpoint. And yet, if you go out and you do the experiment and you look at it, if you try to go through the experiment, you see right away that the sun does not turn into a little pinpoint. And Harry says I have a closed mind. People made fun of me when I started to investigate if flat Earth was real or not, because I had a question. I have the right to question something, and when I started to look into it, I'm like, well, you know what? The experiments they're telling me to do don't work like they say they're going to. Something's not right here. And so I reaffirmed my knowledge of the globe because I did the experiments the way Harry and others say to do them. And when you do them, the way they say to do them, you still can't make it work. You remember Jeranism's 4-mile laser test. Why did he choose 4 miles? Because with his camera at 5.5 feet high and the target 5.5 feet high, you can't perceive curvature because there's not enough distance. And even though I guess the bromance is over, Harry doesn't think I have an open mind anymore. He thinks I have a closed mind because he doesn't agree with me. Isn't that typical of just the flat earth flip-flop twisted idea of things? Hopeful pessimist has a closed mind because I don't agree with hopeful pessimist. How is his not agreeing with me my problem and my closed-mindedness? He doesn't agree with what I say, so I, hopeful pessimist, have the closed mind. The reason I chose my name as hopeful pessimist because I'm hopeful one of these people is going to get it, but I'm pessimistic that they ever will. Because if their thought process is so opposite of what everybody else would consider regular and normal. I mean, if you can actually look at somebody and say, I don't agree with you, you are closed-minded, they might as well be standing and telling that to a mirror because they don't agree with me. I will not talk with you anymore because I don't agree with you. That's closed-minded. I mean, we can have a discussion at any time about anything. But, and I'm not afraid of it. I don't delete comments. I don't... The comments that are really vile, I report. And Google kills their account and they automatically get deleted on their own. But I don't delete comments. And I don't shut off my videos and, disable comments. And I know somebody who does have a video or two that has disabled comments. As a matter of fact, this one Comments are disabled. Why? Because I'm sure a lot of people pointed out, you just proved the globe. You admitted to gravity. You admitted that when you're on a sphere, you can't see the outer curvature. I mean, the guys, they're like, remember the first video I did, Flat Earth Trolls, years ago? And I said it on my very first video because I noticed it. These Flat Earth video makers tell you reality. They state it right in. He stated flat out, if you're standing on a sphere, you can't see the outer curvature of the sphere. They confirm the globe, and then they say, but don't believe what you see. Just listen to what I say. The Earth is flat. And people suck it up just like Harry did. He thinks they're talking about, he'll believe this, but he won't believe when I say a camera's flat and sees the same thing. So it's absolutely true that on a flat plane, if you put a golf ball at the other side of a flat basketball court and you film it from 2 feet and 1 foot and then put your camera on the floor, you'll still see the golf ball. The people at courtside seats don't see the basketball players' shoes magically disappear because they don't have to go up into the stands in order to see the shoes of the players. It's a flat plane. You can see everything at all times, and if you shorten the rise, the run stays the same length on a flat plane because that's flat. You could shorten this. The rise could be 0.5 millimeter high, and still the run would be 6 centimeters. I mean, it doesn't change. The length of the run, no matter if that from B to C is 4 centimeters or 4 millimeters. Doesn't make that change at all on a flat plane because it's flat. But on a sphere, yes, as soon as you start to drop this down, if you're on a rounded surface, that shortens. Exactly what you see. If you go on the top of the Burj Khalifa, you can see 52 miles out into the ocean. But if you're standing there on the shore and you're 6 feet tall, you can only see 3. That's because we live on a sphere.
Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. This has been Productions MJC.